back with another episode. You know who it is. It's KG Money Green. Who do I got to the left of me?
Don't love to connect.
And we done had a special time, special travel. Had a pre-conversation before that. But who do I got to the left of Sierra Dunlap?
Roger Bruce, State Representative, District 61 here in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes, sir.
And is it all right to say my nephew? I'm your uncle? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm your uncle. Your great uncle, actually.
Yes, if y'all didn't know.
I'm getting old. Go ahead.
For the audience members that don't know a little bit about yourself, can you tell us a little bit about you? Because we do know that you're from Harlem.
Yeah, I was born in Harlem, New York a long time ago, and grew up in the St. Nick projects, and moved to Atlanta. Actually, I left New York and went to Virginia first. Went to a Catholic military high school, St. Emma Military Academy, which was kind of weird because by day they were teaching me to love my neighbor and at night how to kill him. But
that was crazy.
That's what it was. It was a military school.
Yeah.
But it was a historic place, and I didn't realize the historic value at the time. But the campus was actually on a slave plantation. And we saw all of the grave sites and everything all over the place. And it's on a mountaintop, and it was two mountaintops actually. On one mountaintop, it was a girls' school, St. Francis, and on the men's side was St. Emma. And the James River ran between the two mountaintops. And we were able to see the Ku Klux Klan out there burning their crosses and things like that. And but we stayed there, graduated from there, and came down to Atlanta to go to Morehouse. And when I got here, Morehouse had a program where they would bring motivational speakers in to talk to the students and pump them up and everything. And they brought a guy in, maybe the first or second week I was here. And he was saying a whole lot of things that I had never heard a Black man say.
Right.
As you probably know, I grew up with my father not being in my life at all. And so you just didn't have a whole lot of male images. Most of the men that were around me were alcoholics. They drank a lot. You know, my uncles were cool, but it wasn't a dad.
Yeah.
So this guy was saying some things I just never heard a Black man say before. And I went up to him and I introduced myself to him. And turns out his name was Maynard Jackson. And Maynard and I became good friends. And he was not the mayor yet. And I went to do an internship at his law firm. Jackson, Patterson, Parks, and Franklin was the law firm. And while I was there, he decided, I was still a student at Morehouse, he decided he was going to run for mayor. And I led the effort on the campus to get him elected. I was the one organizing the students and getting students pumped up about the idea of voting for him to be the first African-American mayor of Atlanta. And as you know, we won. He won. Yeah. I say we were all in it. Yeah,
they do.
We won the election. And that kind of got me started in politics. I ran for office in 1980, ran for the State House. I did not win that time. And then shortly after that, I got married and Brandon was born, and I decided to kind of back off a little bit because I wanted to make sure my son had a relationship with his father. You know, I didn't want the same thing that I had. I wanted to make sure he knew who his dad was and that there was a good, solid relationship.
Right.
And then 4 years later, Ariel was born, and so it was the same thing. But in 2002, the seat opened up, and people were encouraging me to run, and I ran, and I won. And I've been in office since that time, since 2002. And I've done a number of things. I don't know how much depth you want me to go into all this stuff, but the very first piece of legislation that I remember introducing was a bill. I had knocked on this lady's door, and she said, "I've been waiting on you to come." I said, "Okay." And she invited me to come in, and she showed me her kitchen,
Right.
and it was totally gutted out. There was nothing in the kitchen. I said, "Well, where's all your appliances and everything?" And she said, "Come here, let me show you." It was all in the backyard. And she had hired somebody to redo her kitchen.
Right.
She gave them $30,000 to do the work,
Wow.
and they took everything out and put it in the back and said we ran out of money. And they wanted her to give them more money in order to finish the work that they had started,
Right,
which
that's
was
crazy.
a ripoff.
It's crazy.
And so the first piece of legislation was to create a method uh, to give a license to people who did that kind of work.
Mm.
They didn't have to have a license, but if they had a license, it said that they went through certain things to be vetted and make sure that they were respectable and that kind of thing.
Right.
And so that was the first piece of legislation that got passed, was to protect seniors. The second piece, I was talking to some students, matter of fact, right around the corner at A. Philip Randolph Elementary School,
Mhm.
and telling them about how bills got passed and everything. And when I left, one of the students called me. He was 10 years old. And he said, "Representative Bruce, I got a bill I want you to get passed." I said,
At 10?
he was
Yeah.
10 years old.
Right.
I said, "Okay."
He said, "This is the
I
next
said,
job right
"Yeah."
here."
I said, "Okay, tell me what it is." And he said, "No, I want you to come back to the school.
Right.
And when you come back, then I'll tell you." So I get back to the school. He had organized, 10-year-old now, had organized the teachers, the principal, other students, everybody in the cafeteria waiting on me to come back so he could say what this bill was.
Right.
And the bill was to allow parents to be able to come to school, come to the Capitol, come to the school so that without their jobs being put at risk. Apparently, his parents were not able to come to the school, and he wanted them to be able to come
Yeah.
without their job, without getting fired. And after we checked into it, we found there were quite a few companies that if you didn't come to work, you got fired. That was it.
Yeah.
So they ended up organizing all the kids at the school. And some of them became lobbyists. They had their own little equipment at the school where they could do interviews and things like that. And so every morning they would talk about the status of the bill that they wanted to get passed. The bill came to be known as the Parent Protection Act. And this was instigated by a 10-year-old. And as we went through the process, the kids came down to the Capitol. I arranged for them to meet with the governor, 10-year-olds, meet with the governor. And they're sitting in his office, and the parents are sitting in the back.
Right.
Because the meeting was with the kids. And they were telling the governor, said, "We're not old enough to vote yet. But our parents sitting back there, they can vote.
Yeah.
And if you don't support our bill, we're going to tell them not to vote for you." I mean, they were serious about
As
this
they
bill.
should be.
Yeah.
They were serious. And so we got the bill passed out of the House. But as you know, anything that passed out of the House then got to go to the Senate and go through the same process. When it got to the Senate, the Georgia Chamber of Commerce heard about it, and they fought it in the Senate.
That's
They fought
crazy.
it because Georgia is what they call an employment at will state, where you can get fired for any reason or no reason, and they wanted to keep that. So they fought against it, and unfortunately, the Senate didn't pass the bill. But what happened since that time, every year, I reintroduced the bill.
Right.
And little pieces of it got passed. Not the whole thing every time. But now, after all of this time, that entire bill is state law. It just got passed with little pieces. And so the kids, I thought it was a good thing. I bet some of those kids are going to grow up and go into politics as a result of that.
Yeah.
And do whatever they need to do. And but I had a whole lot of bills and things that I got involved with since that time. And probably the most recent thing, as you know, I was responsible for the legislation that allowed for the creation of the city of South Fulton.
Yeah.
And which is a big deal. you have a city that is 90% African American.
Right.
The average household income in the city is about $62,000 a year, and the normal for African Americans is close to 30 something thousand. So we're twice that.
Right.
Most of the people are landowners. We have vacant land so that people can come and get, if they have an idea for a business that they'd like to start, it's a great place to have an opportunity to do that. You have a black mayor, all your members of city council, 7 of them, all of them African American.
Yeah.
Your police chief is African American. We dominate the city, and we are, I believe, it's the 4th largest city in the state. And so I think that's a great
It's a
thing.
great accomplishment.
Yeah, great legacy, something to leave. We're all going to leave the planet, and when I go, I hope that people will remember those positive things that I got done.
Yeah. And how many people can say they created a city?
Well, there's a lot of cities out here. Somebody created them, but I don't know who they are.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to go back to something that you stated, and I feel like it'll be great to speak on this one. You said when you first ran for the representative, you weren't able to win and get
I didn't win the first time,
but you got it the second time. So during that time, what was the learning experience for you in 2002 when you were able to win?
Well, the learning experience started because, as I said, my son was born, and Brandon was born, and the learning experience was how to be a father. How do you devote your time and energy and resources to making sure that your child has the greatest opportunity to be successful? And that's what I focused on.
Mm.
And I was involved in all kinds of things with him. Every school that he went to, I was the PTA president. I just wanted to make sure that he was going to have a good opportunity. And then when Erin was born, I wanted the same thing for her.
Gotcha.
Oh yeah, I have multiple questions, but I guess kind of working with what you're currently talking about now, fatherhood. That's something very key. What was it like for you to experience the emotional development that you had to go through in order to be that present individual within both of your child's lives?
Well, it wasn't really that hard of a decision because I knew I wanted it for me, and I didn't have it. And my thought process was use my father as an example of what not to do.
Yeah.
And to make sure that all of the things that I wanted from my father, that I made sure that my kids had it. And that was the way I dealt with it. And was I perfect? Nobody's perfect, but the reality is that my children know who their daddy is. We have a mutual respect for each other, a mutual love for each other, and there's nothing that I can think of that I wouldn't do for them or they wouldn't do for me. We are a family, and I can't think of anything. With all those other things that I talked about, I can't think of anything more important than that.
And so, do you feel like you use family as the foundation and the principle of every bill or everything you did?
Well, it had something to do with it. Just about every bill that I got involved with was because somebody had an issue and they needed help. And that's the nature of the beast. How can you do things to help other people? And quite frankly, I like helping people. And the downside of that is that it's hard to ask for help.
Yeah.
Because you're always giving help. And it's very difficult to ask for help. And I realized that. So even those people that come to me for help, they probably had difficulty doing that, but they did. So when they came to me, if I was able to help, then I did. If I wasn't able, I tried to find somebody else that was able. But I can't think of any situation where I just told somebody to step away. That just wasn't my thing.
That's fair. I guess my next question kind of goes into the tightrope of life that you've experienced, because I think is a very unique position to come from your background as far as military, then transitioning into a phenomenon of politics where that probably wasn't your mindset originally coming to Atlanta.
It wasn't. When I came to Atlanta, I didn't know what I was going to major in. I really didn't. And I was the first in the family to go to college.
Congratulations.
And it was a unique situation because when I graduated from the military school, I had 3 diplomas at the same time.
Oh, wow.
One was the military diploma, and it would have allowed me to go into the military as a non-commissioned officer if I wanted to. I had taken courses on how to fix cars, so I had a diploma for that as well. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be the first to go to college, and so that's the route that I took. That was the 3rd diploma, was academic. They would let you go to college, and when I came here, I really had no idea. I wanted to come and go to college. And you didn't have to pick a major until your sophomore year. And but after I met Maynard and got involved in community things and political things, I said, "This is it." And I don't know how you guys feel, but you know, to some degree, I believe our life is planned for us to some degree. You're given options, and you pick them. Those that never open up their eyes to the options that are in front of them end up in trouble. They end up doing things that they probably didn't want to do. But if you are cognizant and you really look at things that are presented to you, and you pick from it, and you decide, I'm going to do something positive with my life, I'm gonna
Gym drops.
Gym drops.
Yeah, when you say something is a gym, you drop a gym.
Okay. And but you make that decision, and you may change your mind on what that is as you go through life. I was fortunate in that I was able to do multiple things at the same time, because my first job out of Morehouse had nothing to do with politics. I went to work for the phone company. And
get to know how to talk to people.
Well, what I learned at the phone company, it was an interesting thing. They sent me my first job. They sent me to Macon, Georgia.
Oh wow!
And you know, I'm going Harlem, New York, Macon, Georgia. That was a big shift. And but what happened? I was in Macon maybe. I wasn't even there 6 months, and the manager came and said, you know, you've been doing a great job, and we're going to promote you and make you a manager over the department. And I was like, something wrong with this picture. You know, I just got here. I was the only African American working in that office. And there wasn't anybody else there. And when I really started checking things out, that was during the time when they had changed the laws, and they said you had to have so many Black people in management, and so they didn't have any Black people there to promote. They sent me there to promote me, and it was kind of a weird situation because at first I didn't understand what was going on, but the people that were there definitely didn't know. They didn't know what was going on.
Oh, really? Wow.
They just said, "Here's this Black guy coming here. He's here 6 months,
and
now he's gonna be my boss."
Oh man.
And
so these were the other employees.
Yeah, I said these people. Yeah, I'm saying these people gonna kill me.
Yeah.
That was really what was going on in my mind, and we talking about the 70s.
Yeah, right.
And I said these people gonna kill me, and so I'm sitting there, and he went through all the wonderful reasons why I was gonna get promoted. I could just feel the tension in the room. It was awful.
Did it sound believable when he was talking? Like, did it sound like he was like
No,
he's
not to me, because
Yeah.
I knew I hadn't been there long enough to do all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I knew in those people's mind, I wasn't there as long as they were, so why was I getting it? You know?
Exactly right.
And so anyway, when he got through with all of that, he asked me, he said, "You got anything you want to say?" And that's when life started for me. I said, "Yeah, I do." I said, "All those things that you just said, I hadn't been here long enough to demonstrate all of that. I know it." And then I told the people that were in the room, I said, "The reason why I'm getting promoted is because of the new laws that have been passed that they have to promote so many Black people before they can promote others. And since there weren't any others there, I'm the only one, and that's why this is happening." I said, "But let's be for real. If not for those laws, I would have never had a chance to demonstrate that I'm capable of doing any of that stuff that he said.
Yeah, right.
I wouldn't have the opportunity. So I will prove to you, I can do everything that he just said. I'm not saying I've done it already, but I can do everything he said. And so if you work with me, you know, and we work together, we'll get it done." And I could feel the pressure. I felt
Release him.
release it.
Yeah.
I felt it go out. But there was one lady, it's always one, right? She came up to me afterwards and she said, "You know, I'm going to be indispensable." That was her word. And I never forgot that word because it gave me an opportunity. She said, "I'm going to be indispensable to your success here." And I don't know if she said it, I didn't know if she said it as, "I'm going to help you," or "I'm going to be a pain in the butt." I didn't know what she really meant by it.
Right.
So as I talked a little longer, it turns out that she really wanted me to do stuff for her and give her opportunities and basically kiss her butt. Basically, that's what she wanted. And so I had remembered, and you may want to use this one day, I remember there was a test for indispensability. And I said to her, I said, "Well, let's test your theory. Let's test and see how indispensable you are." And she was looking at me like, "What am I talking about?" But I went and got a cup of water. And I told her, I said, "Let's pretend that this cup is us. We're in this together. This cup of water is everybody on this team." I said, "Now put your finger in the water. So mix it up real good so that the team really knows that you're there." And she put it in there. I said, "Now take it out." I said, "The size of the hole that you left in that water shows how indispensable you are to this team."
That's a good one.
Wasn't no hole in that water.
Exactly.
I ain't had no trouble out of her. And I stayed there for about a year and a half, and they sent me up to Griffin, Georgia to do the same thing.
That's crazy.
And but it was a different job. And eventually I got back to Atlanta. And I stayed with the phone company probably 6-7 years. And what made me leave, there was a program where they went and hired this guy from IBM. And back then IBM was the big to-do with computers.
No.
And they hired this guy to teach Black managers how to get along with white managers.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you. That tightrope of patience.
Well, they sent me to a class. And in that class, and I don't remember the whole class, but there's certain things that you just never forget.
Yeah.
There was a question. If you are invited to a white manager's house for dinner, what should you expect to eat?
Oh my goodness.
And the answer to the question is whatever they cooked, whatever they fixed. Then the second part of that was, if you invite white manager to your house for dinner, what should you fix? And the answer was whatever they wanted to eat. I went berserk. I said, that ain't happening. First of all, I probably would invite you to my house. But secondly, if I eat whatever you want, but I got to cook what you want, I don't understand how that's making us get along.
Right.
That ain't making us get along.
That's an immediate separation.
Exactly. And I went to the president of the company. And I still was a a rookie in the scheme of things, but I was the president of the phone company at
Right.
the time, and I raised hell
Yeah.
and told him what happened. And he tried to apologize for it, but I didn't want to hear it, and I quit. That's when I left, and got involved in some other things, and eventually got back into the political world, which is really what I wanted to do. And that's what happened.
Yeah, because you also did become what, the first black in Douglas County.
I was the first black to serve as chairman of the Douglas County Commission.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now you served that for 8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was your role with that? How was?
Well, that was in the legislature. I was still in the General Assembly, and there were some of us that represented Douglas County, and so we had a caucus. You know, each of the counties and cities have caucuses made up of people that represent the area. And so basically, in that role, I was the one that would call everybody together to talk to the local officials and the local people about bills that they wanted specifically for their county. That's what that was.
Oh, wow. So I know people understand that when it comes to getting things actually done, there's always that cycle of you're thinking it's gonna pass, it's not gonna pass, you gotta do this, and you and your experience have had more than enough experience with having to reintroduce or set up something from the ground up to where you're with it until it is passed and being executed in its totality. So when it comes to having that raw energy to get something done and channeling it into a fine-tuned machine that you done, how do I say this? Almost expertly well. Now that time has caught up to what you've actually.
Well, what ends up happening? You create relationships, you know, while you're there,
right?
And you know, but you have certain things that you're not going to get done.
Okay.
So you have to pick,
right,
and make sense out of what you're trying to do. If it's something that the Republicans feel they're in charge right now, they have the majority, and if it's something that they feel is not going to be good for them, they ain't going to pass it. I mean, plain and simple.
Yeah.
But there was a bill. I'll give you an example that speaks to what you're talking about, where when you get arrested, they take your mugshot, and they put it out on the internet.
Yeah.
And then when you are exonerated, the sheriff will take it down. But there were companies out there that would take it off of the sheriff's site and put it on their own site. And then when you asked them to take it off, they wanted you to give them $500 to take it off. But you weren't guilty of anything.
Yeah.
So a lady came to talk to me about it, that it happened to her. And I got a bill passed, but the way I got it passed, I found some Republicans that had children with mugshots out there. And when I told them what I was trying to do, they were like, "Yeah, let's do it," you know, because they were going to benefit from it as well.
Yeah.
And but it was also a good piece of legislation as well. So you had to pick things like that. And even with the creation of the city of South Fulton, you know, Fulton County, most of the areas of unincorporated Fulton County had become cities.
Right.
And for some reason, the folks on the north side of Fulton County, I don't have to go into detail, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir.
The folks on the north side felt like they were somehow subsidizing the people on the south side. And so as we were putting together the city, they wanted it because they felt like if we had our own city, that they wouldn't have to subsidize us anymore.
Right.
But they didn't do their homework.
Right.
We were subsidizing them. And the reason we were subsidizing them is because you have the sales tax. And the sales tax is divided up amongst cities.
Right.
We weren't a city. So we weren't getting our share of the sales tax. And at that time, it was close to $25 million.
Oh wow.
The $25 million that we could have gotten went back into a pot, and they used it.
Right.
And they didn't realize that was the case. So they helped me get the bill passed, which was fine with me. I wasn't going to tell them.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And then once we became a city, we got our $25 million, along with some other things. And but we were the last portion of Fulton County to become a city. And basically, the way the lines were drawn, we said whatever's left will be the city of South Fulton. And that's how we. It's kind of a crazy looking line, but it's a nice sized city, and we're doing very well. We're into our 7th year, and the city's doing well. When we put the city together, we purposely said that they could not spend more money than they took in. So we're not in debt. We've set up the police, we've set up the fire, we've set up all of the other city departments, and things are going well.
I think the key statement is do your homework.
Do your
A
homework.
lot of people don't do their homework.
Do your homework.
I'm gonna talk about something that you always do, an annual event every year.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not the best at fishing. But the annual fish fry. Tell us about how you love doing that and bring the community together with that.
That started out, my dad never took me fishing, okay? And it started out, I took my son fishing, and I saw how much fun he had. He had a good time fishing. And I said, why don't we just do this and invite some other kids? And I think the first time we did it, we might have had 15, 20 kids. I don't know. It wasn't that many. And but they had so much fun.
Yeah.
So next year I said, well, let's invite some more kids. And what started out with 10 or 15 is now over 1,000 each year. And other people have gotten involved with it. The day before the event, I fill that lake up with fish to make sure they're going to catch something.
Yeah.
They don't know that, but I fill it up with fish. And when the kids come, we have people who have donated fishing poles. We give them all fishing poles. And then it grew some more. The seniors wanted to come out. And what was good about it is that now you have the youngest kids and the oldest people in the same place for 5, 6 hours fishing.
Yeah.
And so the kids are interacting with the adults. They're learning respect for each other. And it turns out just to be a really, really nice event.
Yes. And I remember going as a little one, running around.
Did you catch a fish?
I still haven't caught no fish. I got to catch one.
Okay, well, you got to come. I don't see how you didn't catch a fish. I put them in there.
That's how bad I am, right?
But we put close to 25,000 fish in there the day before.
Oh, wow.
So you can catch a fish.
Yeah. I wonder how that process is. How's that like?
We go to a farm where they raise them and they bring them on a truck and pour them in there the day before.
Wow. Yeah.
Amazing. Now, I know you've accomplished a lot, but I do want to go back very quickly because I think there's some things that we can pull out a little bit further. The tips that you heard Maynard Jackson say in that motivation presentation.
Well, it wasn't just that. He was saying things that, black people stick together, black people work together, educate each other. I mean, he was just saying things I hadn't heard. But they did a documentary about him. I don't know if you saw it. In fact, that's the name of it, Made It. And I'm actually in that documentary. And but one of the things that was interesting to me, he when he was creating the airport, and he insisted that 32%, I think it was 33% of the contracts for anything that happened at that airport went to minority-owned companies, and which I thought was great. And so we're sitting in his office one day, and this guy says, "Mr. Mayor, he had the contract to do the piping, and he said, Mr. Mayor, I've done everything I know to do. I cannot find a black-owned company that does piping." I just can't find one. So I can't comply with that rule.
Right.
And Manny picked up the phone and he called this guy and he said, "How you like to be in the piping business?" And I could tell the guy said, "I don't know anything about piping." He said, "You don't have to know anything about piping. You hire people that know about piping,
Right.
but
Yeah.
you own the company."
Yeah.
I said, "Okay." Millionaire overnight. And
It's crazy.
there was another incident where we're in there and there were no black people on the board of any bank in Atlanta, none. And Maynard had these bank presidents in his office. And he told them, he said, "Look, how are you able to determine what black business owners need if you don't have any black people on your board to help you out, to tell?" And one of the guys, he stood up and he said, "Mr. Mayor, with all due respect, you're not going to tell me who's going to be on the board of my bank."
I believe it.
I was like, "Uh-oh."
Yeah.
That was my first thing came to my mind, uh-oh. And Maynard, he was cool. Didn't lose his temper, nothing. He called staff in and he said, "Monday morning, you take every dime of the city money out of his bank until he get a black person on the board."
Yep.
And the guy, "You can't do that." He said, "I just did." And that's what's going to happen Monday. Guess what happened Monday?
All that money came out.
No, some black people on the board.
So he got right. He got right.
There were some black people on the board of every one of them damn banks.
Oh, I bet he was doing interviews all night.
Yeah.
So that's what happened. And I learned from that. You know, I learned, and that's part of, you know, to your point. If things don't go the way you think they should go, you don't give up.
Facts.
You try a different strategy.
Try them gems.
You do something different. And eventually, if what you're trying to do is the right thing, it will happen. And just think about your own life and the things that you're doing. You know, when you started this podcast, I bet you had some people telling you, you shouldn't be doing that or something. Everybody didn't think that this was the greatest thing for you to do.
Yeah.
Is that a fair statement?
Fair enough.
Yeah. You had somebody that was a naysayer. But if you'd have listened to that person, we wouldn't be sitting here talking.
Exactly. Oh, Jinx got him.
Just go, you know.
And right before we get to the bucket list challenge, I do got one last final question. A lot of people don't know if they do know under the gold dome.
Yeah.
Tell us about how that came about and how you created that part. That platform.
We did our podcast, I guess, our version of it to educate people about what was really taking place in the political process, not just at the Capitol, but we brought people in different walks of life. But it was myself and another representative, and we talked about things that impacted people's lives. And a lot of people didn't know the difference between state government, federal government, city government, county government. People just didn't know. And so we would bring people in from all the different levels so that we could educate people. And if you think about it, education is probably the biggest thing that we could have.
Right.
And that's not necessarily saying, you know, going to school every day. What I'm saying is that being educated about the things that impact your life, and you get that information from a lot of different sources.
Right.
And one thing that we didn't talk about, you know, since we're on that, because I think I learned a lot from it. As you know, I believe you know, in 2004, I was given a speech to replace the school, the high school over in the area. And in the middle of that speech, I felt something pop in my head. I didn't know what it was. It really didn't hurt, it just felt weird. And but started getting dizzy, so I went to my wife and I told her I needed to go to the hospital. Turned out I had a blood vessel that burst in my brain. And I was in a coma for a long time. And when I got out of the coma, they said the first thing I said was, "Did we get to school?" But that was the first thing I remembered. But anyway. But one of the issues that came out of that, I wasn't able to read. And that freaked me out.
Yeah.
Because I was a reader, you know, and I was in the legislature.
Yeah.
You had to read those bills. And
right.
and all this other stuff. And I started not to run for re-election because of that. And what was interesting is I was going through therapy, trying to get all of that back and get things going. And my son was getting ready to graduate from Westlake, and they asked me to be the speaker. Now I got a pipe coming out my head. I can't read. It was kind of weird because I could write, but I couldn't read what I wrote. What I wrote was fine, but I couldn't read what I wrote.
All right.
And so everybody was telling me, man, you can't speak, you can't do that, you can't, everybody was telling me what I couldn't do. And Brandon came to me and he said, Dad, he said, I hear everybody telling you what you can't do. But you told me that nobody could set my limitations but me. So if you don't want to speak at this graduation, I'm okay with that. I'm good. But if you're not doing because other people said you can't do it, then you haven't been telling me the truth. And he threw it back in my face.
I was just about to say that.
It's one of the major when we get the bucket.
He threw it back. And so I went to my wife and I said, I'm going to say something at this graduation.
Right. Yeah.
I said, just sit where I can see you. And if I'm going off the deep end saying something crazy, just give me one of those and I know to shut up and sit down. She never did. I don't know what I said, but she never gave it to me. And then people came up to me afterwards telling me how great it was. And I said, okay. So I just, when I went back to the General Assembly,
right,
I couldn't read the bills, but I was able to, I got with the Apple computer people, and they had a computer that I could put the bills into the computer, and the computer would read it to me. And if I heard it, then I understood it as if I had read it myself. Turns out it was actually better because my eyes didn't get tired, and I just sat there and listened. So I was able to actually listen to more bills than I was able to read anyway. And for about 1 year, I went through that, and that's how I didn't tell anybody. Nobody knew that I was going through that. Angela knew, but nobody else knew I was going through it. And except one person who was my seatmate. She sat right next to me, and she kept my secret. And when I retired, she retired too. And but about 9 months later, a year later, it was like my brain just rebooted, and I was able to do things I couldn't do before. And but if I had given up, I wouldn't have stayed in the legislature that time. I would not have done the things I've done. We probably wouldn't have a city, South Fulton. And so, the lessons learned is don't give up. Don't let somebody else determine what your limitations are. And if somebody else is telling you what you can't do and you know you can do it, you need to cut them loose and move on.
Yes, sir.
Exactly. Well,
did that answer your question?
Yeah, there's a lot of gems. I had to process everything you were saying. But it's amazing. And 22 years and you come on to retirement. We're about to get to the bucket list challenge. I know y'all be ready for it.
I got some questions for the bucket list challenge.
Okay.
Yeah. But come on, retirement, 22 years. I know you feel like you're at peace with it.
I'm at peace. I'm retiring from being in the General Assembly. I'm not retiring from being part of the community. And let me try to give it another way to look at it. You familiar with baseball, right?
Yes, sir.
Familiar with baseball? How many members on the team?
9 members. Are we counting just the players or the whole team?
9 members on the team.
Right.
On the field.
Okay.
All right. And everybody's got a position to play.
All right.
Fair? If I'm the first baseman and the ball gets hit to third base and I run to third base to catch that ball, I'm in the third baseman's way.
Exactly right.
And what else is happening? My base ain't covered.
Exactly, yeah.
You're leaving it vulnerable.
I'm leaving it vulnerable. And that's kind of where I am. As a legislator, my position is to get bills passed and get bills defeated. In order to do that, I have to create relationships. That's the team. That's what it requires. I have to build relationships with others and I've got to be diplomatic, right? Because if I say the governor's a butthole and then go ask the governor to sign my bill, that probably ain't gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So
True.
you have to be diplomatic, and you have to learn how to work with people. That's the position I played for those 22 years. I don't want to play that position anymore. I want to play a different position. I want to be able to raise some hell. And I want to be able to tell people, some things that I couldn't tell them.
While you were in office.
Because I was playing a different position.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So now I'm going to play a different one. And that's kind of how I see this. Does that make sense?
No,
Yeah.
Got to play a different position.
That was a great answer, though. A great visual answer. So if you don't know, this is where we go. We're talking to the audience now. If you don't know, now you know. This is the bucket list challenge. Shout out to Kobe. We need to drop a bomb or some sound effects for that when we do this. During the bucket list challenge, we go over questions that we really don't know. That's in the bucket. Today we're doing a little virtual. I'm gonna go off my phone, ask random questions, and see what happens.
Okay.
All right.
Let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens.
While he's finding the first one, I did have one off the top of my head that I've seen being executed in your experiences through life. So, how or what have you been able to? How do I say this? Your gut and your instincts with the choices that you were given in your life. How did you understand and become confident in knowing, okay, with this positive intention that I have, this is definitely something that I need to do? Like, how did you start disseminating between the differences between, okay, this is actually something I need to do, or this is something that I just want to do because I'm.
Well, I had some examples. My aunt that raised me, my mother didn't actually raise me, my aunt raised me. And my mother's sister. And she was a corrections officer, New York City Department of Corrections. Yeah, she didn't take no crap. And she took me to work with her a few times. I knew I didn't want to be in jail. I knew I didn't want to be in a situation where I was not in control of my own destiny.
Right.
And a good example of that too, I'm not a drinker. I don't drink. I'm not a smoker. I skipped, that period of time when everybody was using drugs and all that stuff. I never did any of that stuff. And it was all born out of the reality that I did not want to be in a situation where I was not in control of my own environment. And as such, did I make mistakes? Absolutely. But when you make a mistake, you know it's a mistake.
Yep.
You know in your heart, I shouldn't have done this.
Yep.
If somebody else is hurt by what you did, you probably shouldn't have done it. If you're hurt by what you did, you probably shouldn't have done it.
Right.
And so you learn, I made this mistake, don't make it again.
Yep.
But you're not going to go through life without making mistakes. If you go through life without making any mistakes, you probably haven't done much of anything.
Yeah.
But the question becomes, did you learn from the mistake you made, and did you resolve not to make it again? And that's hopefully the answer to your question.
Yes, sir. That was more than the answer to the question, honestly.
All right. So the random questions I finally got from the virtual bucket is, first one is, would you rather cook or go to a dine-in restaurant?
Well, I would rather go to a dining restaurant because I can't cook. But if the question is, would I rather have a home cooked meal than go to a restaurant, I think I would prefer the home cooked meal, but not always, because whoever's cooking that meal, they may not. They matter, and they may not want to cook. So every now and then you invite them to go out for dinner, and you keep the peace.
Gotcha. Okay, so to add into food
So did that answer that question?
Yeah, answer.
Go ahead and keep the peace.
So we got a next food question. I'm glad you brought up food. What is one food combination people eat that you can't get behind?
This reminds me of the ranch question.
That's like when people, like, my example would be like, I can't get behind when people stick fries in mayonnaise and just eat it randomly. Like, that's the one I'm like,
stick fries and mayonnaise
and eat it.
Yeah, I don't like that either. But it used to be the certain portions of the pig.
Yeah.
You know, we used to all eat, before we knew any better.
Mhm.
Now I eat some bacon or whatever, but most of the pig I'm not gonna eat.
Yeah.
And but you got that, and you got certain vegetables. What I've learned to do, because you got to eat your vegetables.
Yeah.
So there's this stuff called tiger sauce. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
Oh,
I never heard of
But
tiger
you need to
sauce.
go get you some tiger sauce.
Go give me some.
They sell it's about that big, but I put that on. You can put it on anything really, but you put it on the vegetables and make it tolerable where I can eat.
Yep.
And
That sounds
but it's
like
called
me
tiger
with
sauce.
sauteed vegetables. That's the only thing I can't eat. No raw, nothing.
Now I'm about to get some tiger sauce after this.
Get you some tiger sauce. It's good.
Also, somebody send us some tiger sauce. Also, if we don't get it in time, y'all let us know. All right, next question. Y'all can both answer this one if y'all want to. What's your favorite quote from a movie that gets stuck in your head and you're like, that's my funniest quote?
Funniest or
favorite quote? Let's do favorite quote.
You first.
Me first? Oh my goodness. Well, I can't. I won't recite a physical quote, but well,
let's do scene.
I was
Favorite
just about to
scene.
say. Okay. I'm gonna do animation. Of course, Finding Nemo. Just keep swimming. That's always gonna pop into my head first because it's so subtle, but like it sticks because it's so true. That's the only way you can really move forward is to have that mindset to just keep swimming. Like just keep moving forward. Yes, you're gonna make the mistakes, but you have to keep moving forward if you want to see any type of growth and development. So that's one. But as far as scenes, The Greatest Showman, I feel like that movie encompasses the literal depiction of what a person goes through, not just in life as an entrepreneur, but the failures and ups and downs that somebody can experience and what it can really do as far as like your mental, how it can affect others, and also showcasing how we can all still come together even after the mess ups.
I really don't know. The one of the movies that always pops in my head is Shaft.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know, just always the one line from it, that cat Shaft is a bad mother. Shut your mouth.
Yeah.
I don't know why that stuck in my head after all these years, but that cat Shaft, he was a bad mother.
I mean, he had to be to do the things that he did. So.
Right. All right. Last final two questions. We always ask these last final two. What's something on your bucket list that you want to achieve that you haven't already done?
On my bucket list, the main thing on my bucket list right now is to make sure that Nova. I don't know if did you see the speech that I gave? I sent it. I thought I sent it to you. That I gave when I was retiring.
That's right.
You saw the speech.
Yeah.
And you saw at the end where everybody came. What you gonna do now? And I wanted them to put the picture up, but they couldn't get the camera to work. And finally, I said, I'm not leaving here until y'all get that picture up. And they put the picture of Nova, of my grandbaby up there. I said, that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be spending time making sure that she knows who her grandpa is and that she has every opportunity to do whatever she wants to accomplish in life. That's my intention.
Gotcha. Well, that's amazing. And last final question is, my motto is YOLO live once, so let's make an impact now. How you going to leave the impact on the world?
Well, I hope I've already left an impact. I hope that people will take advantage of this city that was created, that they have, that they take every opportunity to put things in place for the generations that will follow them, and that we've started something that will never go away. That we will have Black businesses born in this city, and that those Black businesses will generate other businesses, and that people will learn from what we've done with the creation of the city, that if you put your mind to it, we can do whatever we want to do. And that's really it. It's you create things. My kids are doing fine. Um, Brandon has his own trucking company. Area works for Google.
Yeah.
Everybody's doing something, and I feel like that's what it was all about. When I leave here, nobody really knows what's next.
Right.
It's kind of a interesting thought. Something has to be responsible for all of this. That's what our logic tells us. You got an earth that's round, there's 2/3 water, and the water doesn't fall off of it. It's spinning around, but we're in the same place all the time.
Yeah.
How do you do all of that? There's got to be something more powerful than we can even imagine.
Yeah.
That is responsible for all of that. People, we refer to whatever that is as God. Different people refer to God in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
I find it troubling that people think that based on where you're born, you don't have any control over where you're born.
Right.
But based on where you're born is to a large degree what God you worship. People in China, they don't worship Jesus. People in India, they don't worship Jesus. And then over a period of time, folks have changed the course of nature. Everything that I've ever read about Jesus says that he doesn't look anything like the pictures that we grew up with.
Right.
That doesn't mean he didn't exist, but the Jesus that they put in front of us is not the one that's described in any of these books.
That's true.
And and depending on where in Africa you originated from, you are indoctrinated by a group of people that came from somewhere else and put something in your head. So my preference is, I think there was a Jesus. I think that he had obviously, one heck of an influence on the world, and I respect all of that. But is he responsible for all of this? And they always say that Jesus is the Son of God. So if he's the Son, that means there's a Father. So whoever that Father is, we don't ever talk about the Father. We always talk about the Son. And so it gets confusing. And as I said, I don't know what's next for us, but I do believe that there is something next. I don't know if we will experience it as we do now, but it's hard to imagine that all of this just goes away.
Yeah.
I don't know. But
Yeah. Any final points you have? Anything you done like before we head out of here?
Final points. I guess I'm talking to the audience now when I say this. There's a lot of monolithic things that could come off in this discussion, based off of just how we describe experiences and things of that sort. But I think the unique thing to take away from this conversation is the time aspect of it. Like, even though we may talk about things that we can experiences that we can still see today,
Right.
the time of what you experience versus what we're experiencing is that key factor to showcase. Yes, this is what I experienced because of the extremity of the time. But now, even though you experience an offset of that, here's a way that you can still move forward that has standed that test of time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
do I get to ask you guys a question?
Oh,
Yeah, that's the first. Yeah.
yeah.
Let's do it.
Because as young people, how old are you?
I'm 20. I'm
See that
23.
you
I'm
do
about to
that.
turn 24.
You do that all the time.
How old are you?
24.
24.
I mean,
In,
how do you forget, bro?
in the 24 years or 23 years that you guys have been around, you've seen certain things too. And, for me, Obama was the first black person to be president of the United States. But for you, he was what, the third or fourth president, if that many, president of the United States, because you weren't here before that. So how are you seeing the United States now? You know, I saw the United States as it was going through segregation, as it was going through killing people simply because they were black. We still do that, but anyway.
Right.
But what is the world like to you guys now, at your age?
I don't know if Dunlap agree with me on this one, but I feel we're in a period of a rebirth. I feel like that's how and I was just talking about this yesterday. I feel like we're in a period where people are trying to figure out what is the next. And too many people are trying to figure out what's next instead of trying to solve the issues that's at hand now. I feel like when you think too much in the future, because I'm big on my two mottos is just vibe and don't let no one destroy your peace. I feel like a lot of people, doesn't matter in political or any type of job or even, let's say, podcast competitors, I feel like a lot of people let people destroy their peace, and that's how they mess up in the long run. I would never let someone destroy my peace. And I feel like if I let someone destroy my peace, they won. I can't let nobody beat me. I can't.
I actually do agree with that. But to add on to it, I view it in more so of a push and pull. I feel like the state of the United States and honestly the world overall has not experienced the level of intellectual advancement at the rate we have before. And I feel like that is going to open a world of beliefs and understanding, more importantly, that has not been experienced yet in society as a whole. Because there are, like you said earlier, there are a lot of things that we understand logically that must be in place for things to happen. But what I feel is what we might see going into our future is the removal of the man-made titles attached to the spiritual elements we can't define ourselves. And I feel like as that develops with the intellectual advancement of the generations after us, because they're the ones that were born with technology out the gate.
Yeah, so, and they're really good at that at a young age too.
Yeah,
right.
It's like they're born with a chip in their head or something. Yeah.
Right. So it's like I just see it as those children stepping up and being like, okay, it might not be the belief by the book and by the terms that you believe, but they're still appreciating these higher powers, and at least there's a commonality in that. So that's just how I see it moving forward.
Last thing, 10 years from now, we're sitting back in this seat. What are you doing now?
10 years from now,
got it?
you tell me. We'll be 34, 33, 34, and we're sitting back in this seat. Hopefully, this brand is bigger than what we are, that we're able to get back in this seat willingly instead of having to. Hopefully, this seat was created for other people to be here. So when we come on, it's like, oh, they're back on the episode. And then we done created more jobs and opportunities for others, which we've started now, but 10 years from now, that will be the thing I would want. Because I want this brand to compete with one thing my mom always said is, I remember she said this when I was younger. She said, especially with football, she said, look, what about you own the team and play when you want to? That always stuck with me. And I was just like, even with the business now.
That's good. I say that about our community because, people will tell you, well, we need a Starbucks in our community. I'm saying, well, do you really need a Starbucks, or do you need a place where you can go get a nice cup of coffee?
Yeah.
And that could be your coffee shop or your coffee shop. It doesn't have to be Starbucks, And so I want people to start thinking: how do you do things for yourself?
Yeah.
How do you create your own dynasty? How do you create the ability to pass wealth on from generation to generation? How do you do that? And you don't do that by making money for everybody else.
Yeah.
You gotta make your own. Anyway, we could have this conversation all day long.
Yeah, but we
But I
had great.
appreciate you guys talking to me. I
Yeah.
really do.
With that being said, it's KG Money Green. Who do I got to the left of me?
It's Don't Let the Connect.
And then who I got to the left of Don?
Representative Roger Bruce and your uncle.
Yes, and it's all love at the end of the day. So thank you for having us. I think they're gonna love this episode.
Yeah.
Always remember this: you only live once, so let's make an impact now. And how y'all gonna make an impact on the world? Drop it in the comments.
Peace.